Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Her Side of the Ruck. I'm Tash,
I'm Bernice.
and we're not pundits.
We're just two women who know what a ruck is.
Well, tomorrow the Women's Rugby World Cup starts here in England. That is super exciting, and this episode is going to primarily focus on the Women's Rugby World Cup, looking at the pool stages. But before we get into that, let's talk about the Rugby Championship and a score that I think shocked the rugby world and the country that Bernice is from. So let's get a South African reaction to that game of the Springboks versus the Aussies. It was a last minute, well, not even last minute, it was a second half display from the Wallabies, wasn't it?
It was, and Tash, I feel like I have no words but a lot to say at the same time. And yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It definitely, I think it shocked the world, but it also shocked like South Africans, and you could see that Australia was shocked even. You could see the players standing there and they were almost in disbelief. Like, did we actually just win the Springboks? And I think, first of all, massive congrats to Australia, because I think if you look at the British and Irish Lions series, some people would have said, like, okay, but, you know, did they deserve the win, the last game win? And there was a lot of like, is Australia really good? Is the British and Irish Lions really good? There were a lot of
Mm.
talks around that. And yeah, I think Australia proved that they were on the up. So it's good to see that Australian rugby is doing well. And obviously, it's not great for South Africans. And South Africa would want to come back stronger this
Yeah.
weekend. And you can already see we did not release our team again on Monday, which thank goodness. But yeah, I think overall it was just a disappointing performance from the Springboks. We came out guns blazing, and Rassie did mention that he gets scared when the Springboks do that, like when they do come out guns blazing, because it's always that quick start and then we can't maintain it. And that's exactly what happened again, unfortunately. And
Mm.
it also happened against Italy. Luckily, we had like there was a very big like the score margin was very big against Italy, so we still walked away with the win. But unfortunately, against Australia, we did not. And I think we're going to have to take a hard look back at ourselves. It seemed like we were the team to tire out at our own altitude. Like, how does that happen? So,
The irony, isn't it?
right, right. So yeah, it wasn't South Africa's best performance, and I think although there were a few standout players, I think Andre Esterhuizen really stood out. He had a great game. Eben Etzebeth, Siya Kolisi, Pieter the Toy, and yeah, we also have a few injuries now. Siya Kolisi is out for at least 4 games. Pieter is
Yes.
out injured. Edel van der Merwe is out injured. Curtly Arendse is out injured. So it'd be interesting to see what the team will look like this weekend. But Rassi was not happy at all at the press conference, and he said he felt very embarrassed. And it was, I think everyone saw what he said. So,
Yeah.
which, yeah, so I think the players are going to have to have a hard look at themselves. And he also said that they're pointing fingers to the coaching staff. Yeah, it was just not nice seeing the way that South Africa played. I mean, our defense was non-existent, which is a
Yeah.
very big
I
concern.
saw a lot of this rather than
Mm,
actually like ducking and going in. And you have to commend Australia for the tries that they did score, kind of one after another after another. They just got the ball rolling.
mm,
And we've seen them do it in the past 12 months where they can just cut up teams, where they find the gap. They're very good at doing line breaks. And so a lot of their athletes have got the pace. They have got the pace to just run and run and run. And when one defender missed a tackle, it seemed that no one else was willing to really do the tackle or at least chase after it, which is not the Springbok side that we both know. And I'm sure plenty of people who are watching this video also know. So it was definitely not the performance that South Africans were expecting. It definitely wasn't the performance the world was expecting. Like, I wasn't watching the game live because I was doing some stuff with family, but I had a lot of people blow up my phone, say, "Have you seen the result?" And I was like, "What do you mean? What do you mean?" And I was like, "Wait,
mm,
Australia, that must mean Australia have taken it." And I saw the score and I
mm.
was like, what? Like, I knew Australia had been building, and they had
Mm.
built through that British and Irish Lions tour, which is something that we mentioned ahead of the TRC. But I don't think they built this much. I don't think South Africans have built this much. I suppose from a Northern Hemisphere perspective, you can see the Springboks really regrouping and coming out with a bang, or at least a more consistent performance and more of an 80-minute performance rather than a great 20 and then a trickle off. And I think I've seen a lot floating in the world of social media that All Blacks fans are scared. And that may or may not be true. You'd like to say that if you're a South African, that this game is a learning experience and it's not one to repeat. That's for sure.
For sure. And please not like we can't do another weekend of that. Because Tash, I don't know how much of the like the sport you are aware of and how much of the disappointment like South Africans had to go through this weekend. So we lost cricket against Australia, we lost a rugby match against Australia. Then our UFC champion lost. Like it was a very rough weekend for South Africans. So in general, like the whole country is a bit battered and bruised from this weekend. But yeah, I think just yeah, it's I think we spoke on the podcast with Safas Unscripted and I mentioned they'd you know, we don't know if Australia is going to take the and win the whole rugby championship, but it might be a kind of something that happened just like last year, like the Los Pumas did. They won the All Blacks, Australia, and the Springboks, and maybe that is something that Australia might get right or might be able to do this year around, and they've
Mm.
ticked one already. But I think on the Springbok side, I just think they made too many errors in the match. And yeah, it kind of started in the latter part of the first half, where we made errors and we just couldn't get over the try line. We had opportunities, but we didn't capitalize. And I think Australia kind of built from that momentum they had in the latter part of the first half. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the team selection looks like. Rassie said that he's going to make changes to the team he'd already selected. And I think that's maybe something that we also need to look at is the selection of match day squads 2 weeks prior, because I just don't think that that is working. And I don't think that we should be doing that because it can go either one of two ways. So either a player knows, okay, they're not playing next weekend, so it kind of doesn't matter how they perform this
Mm.
week. Or they can kind of think, okay, or it can put extra pressure on them and, kind of what then. So it's, yeah, I think that's something we also would need to look at in the future.
It's a fine line between being prepared and being too stuck in the big plan that you've scripted for yourself. And preparation is key in rugby, as we'll talk about with the Women's Rugby World Cup in the next part of this episode. But when you're so rigid in what you thought was going to work, you need to have some flex. I mean, if you talk about Andy Farrell's selections with the British and Irish Lions, he'd probably had in his mind for a very long time who his starting 15 were. And that didn't really change in the 3 tests against Australia. Rassie will
Mm.
be operating in a similar way, but it's clearly Sean going a bit too early, I would say, with the team selection, just being a bit too keen. It gives Joe Schmidt and his coaching staff and the players in Australia a bit more thinking time. And that's the last thing you want to do. You don't want to give your opponent thinking time. And whilst I admire Rassie for his different approach to coaching
Mm.
and management with the Springboks, he's won 2 World Cups with that style of coaching.
Mm.
He's a very successful individual. I think on this occasion, people are maybe starting to work the Rassie plan out. So we might have to revert, I guess, to archetypal rugby practices. But we'll see. I think the Springboks will have started low and will get higher. And for the sake of your country and the morale of all Southerners, I hope that they don't have a repeat this weekend. Right, that's enough chat about the TRC. Let's move on to the Women's Rugby World Cup 2025 happening in my home country, England. Wow, this World Cup, I think, is going to be the biggest for women's rugby and arguably some of the most competitive. massive. It starts tomorrow and it kicks off with England v the USA. The USA's obviously got one of the biggest names, or the biggest name in rugby, Alona Mar, in the squad. We've also got some really big characters in the Red Roses. But let's talk about the pools more specifically than the players. Pool A, we have England, Australia, USA, and Samoa. I'm obviously backing the Red Roses to take that pool, if not the entire tournament. I mean, I've predicted them to win. Here's my fingers being incredibly crossed and every other part of my body. But I feel like this pool, people have described it as the pool of death. So, Bernice, do you want to talk to us a bit about the USA?
Definitely. And I think also this World Cup is going to be so exciting because women's rugby over the past few years have evolved so much. And it's really a lot of people, for sure. And I think a lot of people have said it, but it's really the Ilona Meyer effect. And
Absolutely.
it's amazing to see. And I was watching a documentary on like the England versus Black Ferns match last year, the final. And they were talking about, how they used to play in front of crowds that were empty, they were no one at the matches compared to the final that was absolutely packed. So it's amazing to see, and it's just so exciting. Yeah, I think England is definitely going to be the team to watch this season. But on that note, I think that is probably the pool of death. Yeah, I think you are so excited. But definitely the pool of death. I mean, we've seen with the USA that they walked away with in the sevens tournament with a bronze medal, and they've just got some incredible players in their team. I mean, we just spoke about her, but Ilona Meyer, I think she's just been so great for women's rugby and such an advocate for women in sport. And they've got insane names like Kate Zachary.
The USA obviously have an incredible seven set up, and their performance at Paris 2024 was great. They've had a lot more financial injection into their program as a result of Alona basically going fund women's rugby. So that's great. It just shows how one individual can make an impact. And the USA is a massive sporting nation, but I think historically they've been a bit behind in terms of rugby, although women's rugby has been stronger for the USA and Canada, actually the two North American countries, but compared to other countries that I would guess I say are more traditional rugby nations. I don't want to say they're playing catch up because they're not, because they've qualified for this tournament, whereas other countries haven't qualified. So yeah, I feel like the opening match between England and the USA could be really strong, but I don't see America taking that. I see the English taking that one. So talk about Samoa. Samoa weren't in the Rugby World Cup in 2022 or 2017. They did feature in 2014. They came at the bottom of a pool, but it was a pool made up of England, Canada, and Spain. And that was when England won the Rugby World Cup that year. Yeah. So Samoa got a bit of a tough ride when they last featured in the Rugby World Cup. But for me, I don't see them climbing above fourth, really. But it would also be nice to see an upset. I just hope it's not against the Red Roses. Australia, Bernice, the Wallaroos.
Yeah, and I think on Samoa, I think World Cups are so unpredictable. There's always some sort of upset, and I'm not jinxing it. I'm not saying it's going to happen against the Red Roses, but that's what makes World Cups so special. Is
absolutely
there's always some type of upset, which is great to see. And I think even last year, where the Red Roses went in as the favorites, and then the Black Ferns taking the win, like it's just incredible. But yeah, Australia had their best World Cup finish in 2010 when they came third, and then last time out in New Zealand, they made it to the quarterfinals. So potentially the only team that will push England in the pool. I think USA, as we've mentioned, they've just kind of gone like this, not only women's rugby, but the USA in particular. And I think if you look at Australia in the sevens, like they are an incredible team of women. So it'd be interesting to see what they can do in this year's World Cup.
Yeah, I think Australia will be the only side that will truly push the Red Roses in this pool. But speaking of that, I've watched the Red Roses play recently, and they are so well drilled. The mistakes that they made during the Women's Six Nations, mainly against France in that final match, which in the past few years has decided who comes first or second, or has decided if England get the Grand Slam. And England kind of let France back in, won 43-42. So it was a bit of a nail biter when it came down to it. But they've played France again in a warm-up match, and they just demolished them. I think France are a bit of their worst enemy, and we'll talk about them a bit later on. But England's set piece is so good at the minute. Their driving maul is unstoppable. They have great props that start and come on as impact. And I think for whether it's men or women, if you've got really strong props in the set piece, half your job is done for you, really, when it comes to rugby union. I thought Amy Kikane, when I've seen her play as hooker, her lineouts have been excellent. So anything that's kind of set piece, the Red Roses are super strong. They've also got a squad full of depth. You've got Emily Scarrett, who is going to her 5th Rugby World Cup. That sort of experience is so unique and is unique to the women's game as well. So she is an incredibly intelligent operator as well as a very skillful player. So you've got people like that in the Red Roses squad. If they don't get to the final, at least, I think that will be a shortcoming for them, because this is something that they have been building to. And if I really hope, I don't want them to demolish other teams. I want them to be pushed in the pool stages. But at the same time, if they don't win in the pool stages, I will be shocked. So for me, England come at the top of Pool A. Okay, I feel like Pool B is the one where anything could potentially happen. We've got Canada, Scotland, Wales, and Fiji. Let's talk about Canada. Canada's women's program is arguably one of the best rugby programs in the world at the minute. Their women's sevens program kind of shocked the world when they grabbed a silver medal at Paris 2024. They can go under the radar as a rugby nation, but I feel like they've really been building. I've seen a lot of people on social media saying, actually, it could be a Red Roses Canada final. And I could see that happening. But beating the Black Ferns is also a tall order for any team, particularly in a knockout stage when there's a lot on the line. But Canada could go really far in this competition. They were runners-up in the 2014 Rugby World Cup when England won, so we could have a potential repeat of that in 2025. Who knows? We'll see. I definitely think that Canada are a team to watch in this tournament.
For sure. And Canada also beat the Springboks, the women team, earlier when they toured to South Africa. So I do think they're a team to watch this year, and especially in this pool where really anything can happen. So yeah, so at least seeing them make the quarterfinals, definitely. But then on Scotland, I think it's probably the best side that we've seen them put out. So very excited to see them play. And yeah, they also have some incredible players like Emma Wassell. I mean, she has had 54 consecutive caps for her team, which is insane to see. And yeah, I just think she's such a great player. They've had some competitive warm-up games as well. They didn't always come out on top, but that's exactly what warm-up games are for. And I think that's the best preparations for World Cups, even if you don't win all of the warm-up matches. Like it's still good practice, and that's ultimately what's going to prepare you for matches like that. And I think in the pool that they are in, they stand a really good chance, and anything can happen. So I'm very excited to see where that's going to go.
Absolutely. I think Scotland can get out of the pool stages this year. I mean, I've done a predictions video. I see them get into the quarterfinal playing the Red Roses, and then the Red Roses winning in that women's version of the Calcutta Cup, I guess. So, but yeah, I feel like this is the year for Scotland to get out of the pool and do a really good job. But in their way, there is Wales. I think everyone in the rugby community is aware that the WRU has had a bit of a wobble in kind of every aspect, but they have done fairly well with their women's programs, and they've got some good players. But again, I don't see them. I see them beating Fiji. I see them coming third in this pool, and they are a quality side. But in terms of where Canada are and where Scotland are, I suppose in their cohesion and the quality of their individual players, for me, there's no one in the Wales camp where I go, wow, yeah, they're a superstar. That they've got decent cohesion. They're a good squad. But for me, they won't outshine Scotland and Canada. Fiji's second World Cup, Bernice. And what are your thoughts on them partaking in Pool B?
Yeah, exciting. And it's the first time that they qualified was in 2022.
Mm.
So, yeah, they came third, and what was like a very tough pool made up of the Red Roses, the Black Ferns, and the Bokke. But
That's so
Fiji did come
hard.
third.
Yeah.
So that is such a tough pool. And that probably was the pool of death that time around. But
Oh,
yeah,
oh,
that's
yeah.
insane.
It's unlucky being drawn in the Red Roses and the Black Ferns. Like that is a ridiculously horrible pool. But it's interesting to see Fiji's timeline. The fact that they only first qualified in 2022, but it just
Mm.
goes to show that there are countries like we know what Fiji's like. The Pacific Islands, they love their rugby. They love throwing the ball around. So it's interesting to see that now with the rise of women's rugby, there is a lot more investment in that program. We could get a shock from Fiji in this tournament,
Mm.
but I don't think they'll outclass Canada and Scotland in the 80 minutes that they'll play against both teams. But I think we could see some absolute pieces of beauty from them as a side. For me, it's a shock that if Canada don't come top, I see the Maple Leafs topping that and going on to the knockouts and to the bronze playoff in or potentially the final. So, but definitely the latter stage of the tournament. Pool C, arguably another interesting pool. Not that I think there'll be any upsets in the order that I'll say it in. Pool C, New Zealand, Ireland, Japan, and Spain. Well, the Black Ferns, defending champions, they've run the Women's Rugby World Cup 6 times. Don't need to say anymore. Like these women are here to win. They're here to win again. They want to back it up from 2022, and they'll also want to say that we can perform thousands of miles away from home and we can do just as good a job as we did on home soil in the last Rugby World Cup. But I think there'll be a couple of teams who will have something to say about that. But they have great cohesion as a team, but also great individual caliber. Portia Woodman, Stacey Wacker, Alana Borland, like the list goes on and on and on and on about their class and quality of players in their team. So for me, they come top of that pool. But I do think they could have a competitive match against the Irish. Bernice, thoughts on Ireland?
Sure. And on Stacey Wacker, I just love her. And I just like I've been watching her in the sevens and the sevens tournaments and in the women's rugby World Cups and just women's matches. And oh, I just love her. And I think she's got so much potential. And I also just love her personality, like her
Mm,
social media personality is so fun to watch. But yeah, definitely Ireland can be strong competition for New Zealand, especially within that pool. They've also had some solid warm-up matches. Plenty
mm,
of players have been in winning clubs, specifically in the Celtic Challenge. But the best place was fourth back in 2014. So it'd be interesting to kind of see where we'll end up on the log this
mm,
time around. So
mhm.
but there's been a big turnaround since then, and they could push New Zealand, but I don't see them actually beating the Black Ferns.
No, I don't either. I think it could be a physical contest for sure because
Mm,
you've got some really great ball carriers. I think the set piece could be really interesting, but just with the combination of the front and the back line for the Black Ferns, they are too powerful to not
mm,
lose. I would say. I think Ireland
mm,
could really push them. And I think in terms of the
mm.
squad, Ireland's probably in the best place that it's been in the most recent years in the Rugby World Cups. But yeah, for me, the Black Ferns will top that group. Japan's an interesting one because I feel like as a nation, they're putting a lot of investment into their rugby programs, both men's and women's.
Mm.
But their best Rugby World Cup finish was at the quarterfinals, and that was in 1994. And they didn't make it out of the pool stages in 2017, 2022. I have a feeling that this will be the third time, the third Rugby World Cup, that will happen because for me, Ireland and the Black Ferns are too dominant. They're too strong, and they've got some
Mm.
great individual playmakers that will mean that they outshine the Japanese. Spain could be potentially dark horses. They reached the quarterfinals in 1998 and 2002, but they didn't qualify for the last Rugby World Cup in 2022. But like Ireland, that doesn't mean they won't pitch up and surprise people. I think Spain could have a really good contest against Japan. They could really push Ireland. Well, you also never know with Rugby World Cups. As you said, Bernice, earlier in the episode, there's always a surprise. And unfortunately, the nature of this sport means there's always a lot of injuries. And whilst I hope that no one
Mm,
has a fatal injury in this
mm.
competition, that is the reality of rugby union being a contact sport. So depending on the timings of those fixtures and illnesses or injuries, etc., Spain could capitalise. But I do think they'll struggle to reach the playoffs. What do you think?
Yeah, I have to agree. I think with the Women's World Cup and women's rugby in general being on the ups, it still has some similarities to your men's rugby and your men's tournaments where there are clear standout teams, and there are teams that are still developing. And it's great to see that they have qualified, especially since they didn't qualify for the last World Cup. So that's great, and it means that there have been some good changes and that they are growing. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting, and I think we might see a few upsets and a few surprises. So, who knows? But yeah, we'll see.
Okay, Pool D. That's a nice one to talk about. We've got France, Italy,
Mm.
South Africa, and Brazil. Let's start with the French. Their Women's Six Nations runners up. They've been like that for a couple of years. They have a really fantastic squad. But you know what, Bernice? They're their own worst enemy. The last time I watched them play was against the Red Roses, and they infringed over and over and over and over again. And the thing is, the Red Roses' defense was really quite solid. And I think they've played
Mm.
France so many times that they kind of worked their game plan out. But France are so dangerous in broken play. They have some amazing ball carriers and great speed. Morgane Bourgeois kicking for the post. She's got a nice golden boot. She was a top point scorer in the 2025 Women's Six Nations. So they've got some raw talent in their team. What I've not seen them do, particularly against the top sides, is put a full 80-minute performance together. They're their own worst enemy. So if they can get over that barrier of not infringing, not being offside, etc., they could go really far in this tournament. And for me, I think they'll get to the bronze playoff. I don't see them beating, if they come across the Black Ferns or the Red Roses. I don't, or the Red Roses are beating them 16 times in a row. I don't see them on the 17th occasion beating them. But they could be really dangerous if they sort out some of the cohesiveness
Mm.
and penalties that they've given away. Italy are another team that could potentially do very well if they got to the quarterfinals in 2022 and are ranked seventh in the world. But I reckon they'll come second in this pool, and I don't think they'll beat France because France will be too dominant overall. South Africa, your home, and Brazil.
It's going to be interesting. I think, yeah, Swayze Brain has done some amazing things at the women's team, and I think this is actually the first season that we've really invested
Mm.
in the ladies team. And like, even though we have seen them play in tournaments, I think there's a focus now on the women's team, and you can also see it in the way that they've been performing, and you can also just see the change in like overall in South Africa's women's rugby. The Daisies are the first team that actually play, or like that are professional rugby players, which is great. So only good things can come from that, and potentially we'll see that from the other teams as well, the other provincial teams. But yeah, I think they beat the Black Ferns. So in a warm-up match. They've got a good mixture of power and speed. We've got Nadine Ruiz, who's such a great rugby player, such a good
So
scrum half. She's
fast
good
as
in
well. Yeah.
so fast. She's good in sevens rugby and the 15 women rugby. It's just like amazing to see her play, and feel like she's a very hard worker on the field. She's always a standout player, always gives 100%. And I actually watched an interview of her the other day, and she's such a humble person. And yeah, she's got such an amazing story. So can't wait to see her. And then, yeah, just a bunch of other players as well. Can't wait to see them. But yeah, we have not gone beyond the pool stages yet in a Rugby World Cup. But is this the year? I
It's this.
mean,
This
we'll
could be the.
obviously
This could
have
be the
to.
year for South Africa. Yeah.
Let's see. And I mean, they are in a tricky pool, so kind of anything can happen. I do think France is probably the strongest in the pool, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how everyone would rank after the pool stages. But then on to Brazil. They're 25th in the world, and it's their first ever Rugby World Cup. So
Yeah.
it's very much unknown. We haven't seen much of Brazil. We haven't really seen them play. We're still kind of getting a feel for the players in the team. So we've seen them a bit in the sevens, but yeah, it's kind of going to be the first time that we're going to see them in such a big tournament. So they have 3 out of 5 wins this year, which is, I mean, that's really not bad.
Yeah.
And you can see then why they've qualified for the Rugby World Cup. So it's going to be exciting to watch, and also this only South American team in the competition. So
Yeah.
exciting.
Represent the South American continent. It's great. You always get someone who qualifies and you're like, oh, they're a bit of a surprise. So I
Yeah.
think it's great for exposure in the South American
Mm,
continent as well. We don't really talk a lot about Brazil in terms of rugby on the world stage. We talk a lot about
mm,
Argentina, Chile in the men's game, but not Brazil. So this is fantastic that they're featuring. They're probably in a pool with the potential to do as well as they possibly could do, because I think France will dominate, but I think you could have a good game against South Africa and a good game against Italy. It could go either way. We could be, I think Pool D is the one that's got the most prizes for me. And
mm.
this may be the year that South Africa get out of the pool stages, or we could have a bit of European dominance, or we could have Southern Hemisphere dominance. I feel like that was the one that is going to surprise rugby fans the most. So that is it. We've previewed all the pools in the Women's Rugby World Cup. That is starting tomorrow with England playing the USA. I will be watching and cheering the girls in white and red on. So super exciting. Thank you so much for watching. It's great that we've got so many people enjoying our videos where we're talking about women's rugby. So if you did enjoy this video, please like and subscribe, and also leave a comment down below. It really means a lot to both of us. But for now, we're going to sign off this episode. Saying goodbye is me, Tash.
Saying goodbye is me, Bernice.
See you again soon. Bye.
Bye, guys. Thanks for watching.